There once was a learned professor. He had studied much, he had taught others, he had built a life upon ideas, and yet he had never tasted peace. Not the peace that settles in the bones, not the silence that remains even when the noise ends. So he travelled far to meet a Zen master. Why? Because something in him, some quiet, desperate place, knew that knowing more was not the same as being free. The road was long. Dust clung to his shoes. The professor adjusted his glasses, tightened his grip on the bag of scrolls he carried, and looked up at the worn wooden gate of the temple. Above the archway, carved into old wood, were just two characters, Uji, no knowing. He paused. A strange discomfort crept into him. No knowing, he muttered. How can wisdom begin with ignorance? Still, he entered. Inside the temple, the world slowed down. No one rushed. No one filled the space with chatter. The birds in the garden sang, but softly, as if not to disturb something sacred in the air. He was led without a word to the master's quarters, and there, seated cross-legged on a tatami mat, eyes clear like mountain water, was the Zen master. The professor bowed, the master bowed. Then the professor began to speak, and he did what he always did. He shared what he knew about Buddhist history, about sutras, about Sanskrit, about enlightenment. He spoke of the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, the Five Aggregates. His words flowed like a river after storm. The master simply listened, eyes kind, nodding sometimes, but mostly still. After a long while, the professor paused. I've studied much, he said, but I feel something is missing. I hope you can teach me the way to peace. The master smiled gently. Shall we have tea? He asked. The professor nodded. Tea sounded good. The master brought out 2 cups and a small clay teapot. He placed the cups between them, then began to pour. The warm tea flowed, fragrant and golden. It reached the rim of the professor's cup, then overflowed, dripping onto the mat, spilling. The professor leaned forward, alarmed. Master, the cup is full! No more will go in! The master paused. Then, with the calm of someone who had waited lifetimes to say this, he looked at the professor and said, just like this cup, you are full of your own opinions, assumptions and conclusions. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? Silence filled the room. The sound of dripping tea stopped. The professor sat frozen. In that instant, something inside him cracked. Not broken like glass, but like a seed cracking open beneath the soil. All his years of intellect, all the accolades, degrees, philosophies, had kept him full, so full that nothing new could enter. And here in this simple temple, with nothing but a cup of tea, he had finally heard what books could not teach. He bowed again, this time lower. This time with humility, this time ready. We all carry full cups, filled with what we think we know, filled with memories, identities, expectations, filled with noise. But the path to peace is not about adding more. It begins by emptying. Emptying the cup of certainty, of control, of ego, so that silence has space to speak, so that wisdom can flow in, so that the tea of Zen can finally be poured. Empty your cup. It sounds simple. But how often do we actually do it? We walk into conversations, decisions, even relationships, already full of judgment, full of expectation, full of stories we keep repeating in our own minds. Like the professor, we carry what we know, what we've lived, what we've clung to, and we mistake it for truth. But Zen invites us into something else, something quieter, something that only emerges when we make space. Think about this moment. You're listening to someone speak, but already preparing your reply. You read a headline and react before reading the full story. You try something new, but bring along your old fears and habits. These are full cups. No room for presence, no room for clarity, no room for now. Zen doesn't ask you to forget your past. It simply asks, can you put it down for just this moment? Can you meet what's here with fresh eyes? Not as a teacher, not as a victim, not as a title or a role, but simply as a beginner. In Zen, there's a word for this, shoshin, beginner's mind. It means approaching life not with the arrogance of I know, but with the openness of I'm listening. When the cup is empty, every moment becomes new. You taste the tea like it's your first sip. You hear a bird's song, not as background noise, but as music for the soul. You meet someone, not as enemy or friend or stranger, but as a mystery unfolding. This is not naivety. This is wisdom. The kind that bows before the world and says, I don't need to control, I just want to see clearly. Let me tell you another short tale. A farmer had one horse. One day it ran away. His neighbors said, such bad luck. The farmer replied, maybe. The next day the horse returned with 2 wild horses. The neighbors said, such good luck. The farmer said, maybe. Then his son tried to ride one of the wild horses and broke his leg. The neighbor said, what terrible luck. The farmer said, maybe. Later, soldiers came to the village, drafting every able-bodied young man for war. They skipped his son. The neighbor said, what great luck. The farmer said, maybe. That farmer had an empty cup, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't cling. He didn't grasp for meaning in every up and down. He allowed life to unfold without stuffing it into the boxes of good or bad. That's the cup we're being asked to empty, not the cup of compassion or care, but the cup of clinging. The cup of fixed meanings, the cup of needing to always be right. Breathe now. Place your hand gently on your chest. Feel your breath rise and fall. Ask yourself quietly, what have I been carrying that no longer serves me? What beliefs, what judgments, what stories fill my cup until nothing else fits? And can I, just for today, set them down? Not forever. Just for now. Just long enough to sip the tea of this very moment. The professor remained at the temple for many days. He did not study more scriptures. He did not argue doctrines. He swept leaves. He fetched water. He sat in silence. And in that silence, he began to hear things for the very first time. The crackle of a leaf underfoot, the sound of a bell drifting across the valley, the sensation of breath, simply arriving and leaving. He had come seeking wisdom. What he found instead was presence. Before the professor left, he bowed deeply to the master. Thank you for showing me what I did not know I was missing. The master poured him one final cup of tea. This time the professor watched, closely. He noticed how the master's hands moved, deliberate, unhurried, present. He noticed the steam rising, the way the light caught it, the fragrance of the leaves, subtle but grounding. And as he sipped, he tasted not just tea, but life. The master spoke softly. The way is not hidden, my friend. It's only obscured by what we insist on holding. We live in a world that rewards fullness, full schedules, full resumes, full carts, full closets, even full minds. Zen offers a rebellion, a peaceful one. It whispers, let go of what you think you need, and perhaps you'll find what you truly are. You don't need to travel to a temple. You don't need to be a monk. You simply need to pause, breathe, and notice, where am I full and what might I release? So here is a gentle practice. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or stuck, sit quietly, close your eyes, imagine a teacup in your hand, feel it heavy, overfilled, spilling with old thoughts, worries, noise. Now, slowly tip it, let it empty, not all at once, but breath by breath. With each exhale, release something, a belief about who you must be, a judgment about someone else, a regret from the past, a fear about the future. Empty the cup and sit with what remains. Stillness, space. Now, you've heard the story. Now live the lesson. Today, may you walk softly, speak slowly, and listen deeply, not just to others, but to the quiet voice within, because peace is not a prize to win. It is the space we return to when the cup is empty. Thank you for listening. If this story brought you calm, insight, or comfort, share it, like, subscribe, or simply breathe. We'll be here when you're ready for the next tale.